Welcome back, everybody, to CFP Talks. I'm Joe Nissim. With me, as always, is Mr. David Fuchs, and we are picking up where we left off on getting to know me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Only
And
at
yeah, it's part
146
two.
episodes, so that's all.
Yeah. 146. It's part number two
Yeah,
of that. So you'll see. We want to pick up right where we left off. And
awesome.
then Joe, I want to get right into it
Yeah,
because we left off at a good spot because we had just finished talking about you transitioning from being an advisor. You gave us a nice description on what you did, how you did it, your experiences there. Then we kind of stopped right where you were transitioning. So let's get right back into it. Take everybody through how you went from being an advisor to doing really how you started doing what you do now, really tutoring for all the exams in the financial services industry.
yeah. So great question. So, when I left um, Smith Barney, which obviously is now Morgan Stanley, I went and started working on a trading desk. And going and working with clients to working on a trading desk was such a big like disparity because you go from like feeling like you're creating good in the world and you're working with people and you're solving problems, and then you're only doing it for yourself, where it's like, how much money can I make today? Like, you're trying to figure out the tape, and it's a completely different challenge, which is awesome. I just didn't like it as much as I thought I would like day trading. So I decided that I was going to start an investment advisory. I had a couple of old clients that I had stayed in touch with who decided to join me at the investment advisory. And while I was getting that set up, I was only working with maybe 10 clients. I decided, hey, you know what? Why don't I start tutoring in the evenings to start supplementing my cash flow? And I said, let me just start at the very beginning. Where I left off tutoring when I was in high school and college was I would tutor SATs. So I said, let me pick up kind of at the next logical step, which is let me do some college level tutoring.
So you had a background doing this stuff,
Yeah.
and
So I,
were you charging people? Just curious, or were you getting free swipes at the college?
no, I was charging people. It was like, I very much was like, I need the money, like, because I didn't want to draw down my entire, like, at that time when I was trading, the money that you made is what you made. And if you didn't make any money, you had no income. And so I was using my combination, my savings, my Roth IRA that I had converted, and I had stocked up a bunch of money in both of those. But for anybody who's ever lost a job or doesn't have income, you watch those balances go down. It's one of the scariest things is just watching that balance go down every month. And I was very lucky that my sister had an extra room in her apartment and she let me stay there for a while. But you can't wear out that welcome too much. And plus you can't live with your adult sibling for too long before they're like, get the hell out of here. Like, you're really impeding on my life. So I was like, you know what? Let me start picking up some tutoring hours. And I started in downtown New York. I was tutoring some kids at Pace and NYU and even a couple people from Columbia. And I was literally doing accounting 101, something that I was
Huh.
particularly pretty good at. I did debits, a lot of debits and credits, and teaching people how to construct income statement and balance sheets and so on. And I basically taught two things: time value of money and accounting 101.
Makes sense because I always say whenever I'm talking to people about your course, I say Joe loves time value of money. He is going to beat that horse to death.
Correct. Like, and that was the thing that I always kind of started CFPers in is like, it's such a fundamental part of CFP that you have to get to know it. So then I started teaching that, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm looking at, and my investment advisory, and I was coaching a little bit, and I'm tutoring, and I'm like, I'm just doing way too much at one point. And I end up saying, I ran the investment advisory for a couple of years, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, I just want to be out of finance. So I was running another business because this is what I did in my 20s is I just tried a little bit of everything. But the tutoring was always kind of the one constant in my life that was like I was teaching that. And eventually I had tutored so much accounting that kids at NYU and Stern would come back and be like, can you teach me corporate finance? And I did a little corporate finance and a little bit of this and a little bit of this. And eventually I had a student who was in the executive program at Stern that was like, can you help me through my MBA? And I helped him through his MBA. And eventually he's like, hey, can you take me through CFA? I was like, ah, man, I don't, I've never taken CFA. I don't know that much about it. He's like, look, it's basically everything we did in the MBA, but in an exam format. And I can't manage this exam by myself. And I go, all right, fine. So, but I said, like, the disclaimer is like, hey, I've never taken CFA. I don't even know that much about it. He goes on to pass CFA level one, and he starts referring me to all of his peers in his executive program who go on to take level one. And at that point, when he started referring all those students and they started referring more students, I shut down everything else and was like, I'm just going to exclusively focus on tutoring. And for the greater part of 2 years, it was a lot of CFA level one primarily. So, like some college courses and CFA level one. And I taught a lot of accounting, a lot of accounting.
Is that what most of that exam is made up of?
It's a lot of accounting. It's a lot of accounting because even the equity and the fixed income portions
Yeah.
still are tied into accounting in some shape or form. So eventually I go and take CFA, and I have actually somebody as well, a guy by the name of Sid Mizra says, Joe, will you teach me? Will you work with me for CFP? I'm like, dude, I'm doing a lot of CFA, but obviously I have my CFP. I'm never that far from the CFP material because
Right.
even CFA level three covers some CFP stuff, especially on the estate side. So I was never that unfamiliar. And I had done like little bits and dribs and drabs of CFP where people come in for 3 sessions or 5 or 10 or so on. But Sid was like one of the first people in as a full-time tutor that I was working with. Sid goes on and passes the exam, and I really taught him how to manage the study process. And he did a great job with his prep, and he goes on and he passes the test. I, at this point, have no idea, but Sid has this massive LinkedIn following and is like, go talk to Joe if you're taking your CFP. And literally in the next 6 months, I think I told, work with 15 or 20 people to help them pass the test.
I was one of them.
And you were one of them. Exactly right. So like Sid kind of like kicked that off. And, that first kind of couple of groups were mainly very, very small. I kept it at 3 people. I still did a lot of one-on-one, and then it slowly migrated into the small group course that is currently here, that we kind of took best practices from each kind of group and noticing, okay, here's what worked, here's what didn't work. Let's modify this. Let's give it another try. And the thing that really took it to the next level was getting some consulting from old teachers. So there is this group, Los Angeles, pretty lucky around here because we have institutions like LMU, UCLA, USC, obviously the Los Angeles School District itself. And there's a lot of retired teachers who spend 20 years in the classroom, 25 years in the classroom, who understand how learning works in groups and how to get the best out of students. And I hired 2 consultants that used to work for the Los Angeles School District. One of them actually had some overlap with UCLA as well, where they work for UCLA and the Los Angeles School District. And they literally sat in my office. There's an extra desk right here. They sat in my office and they literally observed, and they tore me apart. And they were like,
Hmm.
you have to do this and change this and say this and do that. And they were like, and they changed the entire scope of what's now the program. And they work with me kind of hand in hand to turn the program into an actual learning group versus just let's tutor you, or I'm going to demonstrate this problem, which is kind of the idea where people think of when you're coming in for tutoring or a class. And you got to experience a little bit of that, David, in your group. And that was kind of the testing ground to see if, like, I institute these teaching practices, will they work? And it gave me the confidence to go, okay, let's full fledged. And since then, that's when our pass rates kind of skyrocketed. And that's when I said, okay, I think I'm going to make CFP one of the big focal points of the business, where now represents almost 35 to 40% of what I do.
Yeah, and okay, answered that because I was going to ask you why you well, actually, you could answer that. Like,
Yeah.
why the CFP? Why are you focused on the CFP? And I don't think I'm not asking that in a way that I think you're wrong because I think you are right. But what's your rationale for this? Is why I chose to mainly focus on the CFP. And right after that, well, answer that, then I'll ask you the follow-up
Okay.
question.
So great question. And I'll tell you, here's the big motivating reason. There's three major providers for the CFP, and they all do it the exact same way. And I thought, one, I get to influence the next generation of financial advisors, because I think financial advisors are going to be more in demand as technology changes and everybody's scared FAs are going to all lose their job. They're not, because FAs are more in demand now than they've ever been before. And I think becoming a CFP will become the industry standard. I just
Yeah.
want to be a part of that, because I think it's good, like, that we get educated and we learn, because the way that my family was and our financial situations, we would have really benefited from a CFP. If somebody knew to ask my mom the questions that I turn around and ask my clients, that you turn around and ask your clients now, and I was like, I can affect it um, in a really good way as an FA, but I can affect it in a much different way as an actual educator, where I'm getting to affect the way that people solve problems and also look at the industry, because there's it's an important thing that with us as educators, the way we approach the material, if we approach it as go and pass this test
Mhm.
versus, let's go ahead and actually let's make a difference in client lives, it changes the standpoint of the way people think and the way that they approach the exam as being something that they're using to build into their career versus just some letters after their names.
And so you answered a lot. You answered because I had some questions written down for you. Why you focus on the CFP? Check. What fulfillment do you get? And so it's kind of like I was asking you fulfillment as well as how you feel like you're making an impact on the industry. You kind of touched on both of those,
Yeah.
which I think is great. And I think you're kind of spot on when you say obviously the demand for advisors, keeps going up and you're having an impact on the future generation of CFPs, including myself, including, a couple people I took the exam with, a couple people that I referred to you. So love that. Last question. Do you ever or do you ever kind of feel like you miss being on the advisory side of the business?
Sometimes. I certainly
Like
sometimes.
what aspects, like what triggers that? Like what parts of that do you miss?
It's very satisfying being an FA. There's a lot of satisfaction to the job. I think there's one thing that I really miss is working in a team. This is obviously a very solo job,
Yeah.
and I'm getting the opportunity, and I'm lucky enough that this is starting to grow in a way where I get to hire and build out a team, which I'm very, very excited about, to work in a team. I really do miss working in a team environment, because working with a bunch of other guys that worked hard, that wanted to take care of clients, we were solving problems, and it was great to say, here's client X, what do we do with them? And then, we will be able to kind of formulate an amazing plan based on 25 years of experience, 20 years of experience, 30 years of experience. And then, I was the youngest guy in the room, my 3, 4, or 5, depending on the time. That was awesome. I genuinely missed that. When a client has a success or comes back and thanks you and says, I couldn't have done this without you, You've relieved
Yeah,
anxiety. Thank God I met you. Like you
right.
have
You
like
helped them
saved.
retire, you helped them
Yeah,
buy that house, you helped them pay down some debt, and you were kind of the engine that got them there.
right. Or even when you just start, you take somebody's all their slop and start organizing it for them, and then they come back and go, "We would have never retired had we never met you." Like we actually feel like we're on track, or thank God that we met. Like that, those were really satisfying moments to work with clients, especially when they showed their appreciation, and when people were very generous. Like they would show so much love around the holidays. They want to go out to dinner. They give you Christmas gifts. They invite you to Christmas parties. You get invited to weddings. Like you knew you were an integral part of their lives, which was very,
Mhm.
very satisfying. So you kind of miss that a little bit. I mean, obviously, that comes with its ups and downs as well, but it is ultimately at the end of the day, a very gratifying feeling.
Well, I bet you also feel something similar when you help people pass the exam.
True.
You help them, like I always say, I would never have passed without.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's
a
similar
very
satisfaction.
yeah, it's a very similar sense of satisfaction. And the better that you get at teaching, the more satisfying it gets. And
Yeah,
it's pretty. So yeah, I mean it's a similar type of satisfaction. Yeah, I mean you hit the nail on the head
yeah, yeah.
for sure.
Good, good.
Have we gotten to know me? That's enough, right?
That's enough.
You
We,
got to take
yeah,
me.
they hear from you
You
enough.
yeah, you got to pay for a drink at this point if you want more. Okay, I can't. That's it. You got to peek behind the curtain. You don't get the whole show.
That's right.
Fair enough, right?
Close it off.
All right, guys. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope you got to enjoy getting a chance to get to know me a little bit about my background and how I ended up in this space. As always, with any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to David or myself, and we will see you on our next episode.